Well, ITC got the film, and my understanding is that the higher ups were under the impression that they were going to make a quote unquote sexploitation film. And they just wanted this to be the sexiest film ever. And yet the director, the actors, myself, we were all intending to make something of an art film, but we had to keep that under the radar. Um, so John Dahl, it's my understanding, was sold to them in typical Hollywood typecasting fashion. This was a movie that involved a woman absconding with a bag of money, and his two previous movies, it involved women absconding with bags of money. So clearly he was the best director for this.
I guess the thing that attracted me to it was the humor and the sort of outrageous behavior of this woman that I kept thinking, well, she's going to be redeemable at some point. She just can't be all that bad, you know. And then she just never, she never does a good thing in the movie.
I think we all have a dark side. And I think Bridget's gift is being able to see that in other people before they see it in themselves.
You know, the script was pretty good. Nobody was thinking that there had to be a lot of work done on it.
There was one moment when Dahl, who assumed, I guess, was in the habit of working with regular screenwriters, called me up and told me he needed 5 pages cut. And I thought I'd already cut the thing to the bone. And I said, well, if you've got to have 5 pages cut, I'll cut 5 pages. And I went right to work and I cut the 5 pages. And he called me up just short of screaming and said, you can't cut this scene and you can't cut that scene. And I said, well, you said you needed 5 pages cut. How the heck else am I supposed to do it? And John said, change the margins.
We thought people would really be upset with this sort of like portrayal of this female character. In fact, I mean, we had a very difficult time even finding an actress that wanted to play the part.
What I'm interested in tends to be women, so it was a natural for me to write about a woman and to make it from her point of view. I was compelled by her, I think, because she scared me. And I came to the subject matter through my experience in telemarketing. The seed of the idea for the movie is actually that scene in which Bridget persuades Mike, just for fun, to see if they can telemarket murder over the phone. That was the notion that got me started on the whole thing. You know, I'll give away a secret. The first draft I wrote of the movie had Mike as the viewpoint character, as the protagonist. Because I knew that I wanted to sell this thing, and I knew that the good guy is generally the protagonist. But upon reading it, it started to hit me that that was not the way to go. The character I wanted to go home with, the character I wanted to see acting behind the scenes, was Bridget. So my second draft involved making that switch.
Men and women are threatened by strong women alike. I mean, I don't think it's just reserved to the male population. I think there are women who are appalled by women who want more than they're supposed to.
We wouldn't be sitting here talking about it now if it weren't for the fact that Linda Fiorentino, really wanted to make this movie. I mean, I'd say probably 30 women in Hollywood turned that role down. Linda was the one that really sort of read the script and totally got it. I think she said, it was not her opportunity to be sort of the guy in a movie, and she loved it. So we just caught her at the perfect moment.
It's a part that was traditionally reserved for male actors. So you don't usually see women doing the things that I do in this film. Usually men do it.
So really, we had a terrific script, and we had a cast that really got the movie. And between Linda, who was ready to sort of be this vicious woman, and Peter Berg, who was so smart about it, was prepared to play this sort of unassuming, kind, sort of gentle man that lived in in Beston.
I think I got pretty early in the process that casting Mike was going to be difficult because of the vulnerability the character has to show. because of the fact that the character essentially loses. They are not a typical hero because they're in the antagonist role, even though the protagonist is an evil bitch. And so, yeah, when I watched that movie, Linda's performance is phenomenal, but the performance that, to my mind, holds together the movie is Peter Berg's.
It was very difficult to find the part that Peter Berg played. I actually never really quite had a meeting like this with an actor either, where he so totally understood the movie and he so totally understood the part that he had to play in the film. He said, you know, I've got to sort of like I've got to kind of prop up this woman so that you can have the fun and the madness of this movie. Very kind of sort of supportive of the process and understanding his role in the overall film.
The character of Mike is pretty much a straight character surrounded by slightly overdrawn, overblown characters, such as Linda's character, the character Bridget, or Bill Pullman. These are pretty extreme characters, very, very nasty people who manage to sort of suck Mike up into their world. I pretty much play things as straight as possible, and I think the contrast in character is what makes the film so funny.
What Buffalo Girls meant to me was, it was about that small town, big town issue. Mike, coming from the tiny town that he did, for him, his backstory, his shame was wrapped up in Buffalo. To him, Buffalo was the big city. And Buffalo Girls were his downfall, at least earlier in his life. And this was his chance to grow beyond that, because here he was with a New York girl. And if he could handle her, then he was past that time in his life that had caused him shame. It was about growth. So Buffalo Girls is about what seems big and important and daunting to a small town boy.
You know, it's interesting with the sex scenes because a lot of times it's the woman on the set that's like uncomfortable with, you know, with the scene. On this set, again, Linda Fiorentino as man, almost intimidated poor Peter into like some of these scenes. And Peter was a little anxious about some of these scenes. You know, I'm not sure about this. I don't want it to be pornographic. And then the delightful and, you know, devious Bill Pullman sort of, I mean, Bill's this sort of like great dramatic actor, but he is, you know, he has just such a gift for comedic timing. He's just like, I have seen him in front of audiences with people, and, you know, he has just got great timing.
Up came this script, The Last Seduction, and he sent it to me and said, look at it, there's two good parts, two good male parts. See which one you liked. And I liked the part of Clay. And he said, fine, let's get going, even though it was kind of, I suppose you'd say it was the smaller part, and you missed out on the heavy breathing with Linda Fiorentino.
The combination of those three people, you know, I think made something quite interesting.
Steve Barancik's script was very complete. It had a style and a tone that seemed to be very instructive about what we had to do. And the character was inside that world of noir, which is driven by a lot of crime kind of element, and within crime then there's a lot of kind of detection involved, and instincts about what she was all about, what I had to find out, what I had to do to try to track her as she made her way from New York City towards Buffalo, New York.
Buffalo Girls was just kind of it was the title I loved. It was a little obscure when watching the movie, but it did make sense. But what I was told was that the Larry McMurtry book of the same name was about to be filmed as a TV miniseries, I believe, and they didn't want to run afoul of that. So they asked me to submit titles, and if memory serves, I submitted 50 to 100. And then when I heard they were getting ready to title it The Last Seduction, I submitted 50 to 100 more because I didn't understand what that meant. So I am not a great fan of the title. Rendered more ridiculous when the sequel came out, The Last Seduction 2. But it is what it is, and apparently it didn't keep the movie from being something of a success.
The dialogue had real authenticity and urgency, and there was a little wink inside of it that wasn't overdone, so it didn't ask for a big, broad comedy or anything. The sections that we really did kind of have to kind of add stuff, I suppose you'd say, was usually because we were adjusting to physical environment. And once we get on the set, John would kind of smell things out and say, well, this is going to be working good over here, but you got to get over here, and well, if we can make this all one flowing thing, you got a certain leg of it that we don't have any dialogue now, but you might keep that alive during that part. So I think of it particularly in that scene with Bill Nunn where he leaves, and then I follow him out into the hallway, and I kind of wrap myself around him a couple of different times trying to, get his attention again. And we kind of thought of that as a seduction scene, though I don't think it was the last one. So, I always hear of this kind of film, The Last Seduction, as a noir film, part of that, always meant to me kind of like a overly obvious filmic effects of Venetian blinds with lights being pulled through it and seductive girls with hats on where you only see one eye. And this really was fresh. I mean, that was the exciting thing about it, was that somehow John had come into this this level of crime story, I guess is what you say. And he brought in with Kill Me Again and Red Rock West, I think he brought in some kind of a very kind of blue collar, I thought, approach to it. It's like a Raymond Carver version of how to do these stories and not, crap it up with a lot of Baroque, references to previous movies and all that stuff.
I love noir films. I love Edward Hopper. There's all those kind of like great American images of, Billy Wilder is, a masterful filmmaker to me.
He has a great sense of what the camera wants to see. And I always remember there's a lot of kind of, with crime stories, there's a lot about detection, and there's a lot about a character who's trying to put something together. And I think in particular the scene where I realized it's something written one way, but if you see it in the mirror, it says something else. And it's a very critical moment. And my whole physical turning and looking and seeing and then looking in another mirror and seeing and then turning back made the acting really easy. Because I didn't have to go, oh, aha, I got it. It was all kind of done through the twists and turns of finding the camera and as it moved around as my revelations were happening in my head.
Like I said, the filmmakers were trying to make an art movie without the company knowing it. And so some of the deleted scenes really relate to an incident where the company started to suspect that something was going on under the radar. There's a scene that takes place in a school gymnasium, and you should know that there's a theme of sexual role-playing that's throughout the original script. And these are the scenes that were cut. The scene in the school gymnasium involved Bridget kind of pretending she was a cheerleader and helping Mike with one of his sexual fantasies in this regard. And they decided it might be kind of fun and kinky to put on a pair of suspenders. And apparently that was what gave it away to ITC. They called the principals into the office. They demanded an honest accounting of them. Are we making an art film? Everyone pleaded that, of course, nobody involved in this had any artistic pretensions. They lost half a day of filming, and from what I understand, they decreed that the gymnasium scene could no longer be in the movie, kind of as punishment for possible artistic impressions unadmitted to. Which I believe in the end caused a number of other scenes to be removed because without the gymnasium scene, they probably didn't work.
Actually, another really interesting component to The Last Seduction is the wardrobe, which Terry Dresbach did, and Terry had done the first two movies with me, and you know, one of the things that we wanted to do was give kind of a contrast between New York and Beston, the small town in upstate. So we basically put everybody in Beston is in blue and brown, and particularly baby blue and you know, brown. And of course everybody, you know, Linda is almost always in black and white. I don't think she wears any other color. And then I love this idea of like, you know, and especially with, it looks particularly good on Linda, but we sort of made her look like, she has kind of like a Lauren Bacall look, the way her hair's combed, and then this bright red lipstick. Those were the ideas behind the kind of the look and the style and the feel of Last Seduction. It's almost like being in film school anyway. It was a lot of fun. We played with color, and you know, I think we used, like, you know, why did we pick green for her apartment in New York? You know, it was because, you know, of money and greed. I mean, you know, it was a little, you know, silly, but anyway, that's why we made those choices. You know, I'm a big fan of David Lynch and Angelo Badalamenti, and there was Firewalk with Me, which is one of my favorite movies. There was the soundtrack for that movie I just think is brilliant, and there's this like incredibly like interesting dark passages of music, and we started temping with that, and it just helped our movie take on this like really sort of kind of dark quality.
There was, the original ending had J.T. Walsh returning as Mike's lawyer. To me, that was closing the loop, showing that Bridget had control over all aspects of this. I presume that JT volunteered as a public defender and got the gig, and we were going to make sure that Mike never got out of jail. Others, John Dahl, the producers, thought that strained credulity, and I respect their right to think so.
You know, the final scene, I never had any problems with the final scene, you know. I liked it because I think once I realized that I've been duped or pulled around, that there's a certain kind of agreement that she and I had about our relationship and the way we believed the world was, and there was a certain elegance that of spirit that we maintained with each other, and in slightly inelegant situations like being tied up and having mace poured down your throat. It's kind of hard to be elegant, but you can be elegant about agreement that she had the control and she was going to do what she wanted. And inside that, there's a few points to be made. So in the end, I took my mace and I died, you know, somewhat contentedly.
I have heard that women take inspiration from that character, and I don't mean to speak of women as a whole, but apparently there's a fair amount of women who view themselves as mousy, who take inspiration from Bridget Gregory and her assertiveness and so on and so forth. I can't say that I meant to write this as any sort of self-help movie, and I did envision her a villain at all times. But my goal in creating her was to create an attractive villain, to create a villain that men would see they might have found themselves vulnerable to as well. It's about not your breaking point, but your breaking away point. The question with Bridget Gregory, I think, is at what time would you have walked away, or would you have been Mike Swale right there up till the end?
The film had a budget of about, I think it was $2.5 million, and the kind of, you know, which for me was actually quite refreshing to work at, you know, because there was so little money. It's almost like, you know, there was a lot less restrictions in a way. It was a lot freer to, you know, but there wasn't so much money riding on it. At least that's the way I looked at it. And We were about a week into filming the movie when the guy who was running ITC actually left and was replaced by a new guy. So the new guys had this movie that was a week into shooting. They had nothing invested in it personally. They didn't care whether it sort of came or went. And I think it was easier for them to just continue making the film than it was to, shut it down. So the old guys had left, and they had their sort of set of notes that they wanted us to try to achieve. So and then the new guys came in, and they didn't really have any notes. So it really left us, the filmmakers, kind of free of parental responsibility, if you will. Ultimately, the European distributors picked up the film, and it actually did pretty well in France and England. Played at the Deauville Film Festival. I remember getting a call from Peter and Linda. They'd gone to this film festival and said, "Hey, you can't believe it. People actually like the movie." They were sort of in shock. I was in shock because we really just didn't really expect much to come out of it. Ultimately, its success in Europe gave way to October Films in the United States said, we should try to release this theatrically in the United States.
I guess when the movie was released, and then that year someone was trying to nominate Linda for an Oscar, and she wasn't eligible because the movie had been on cable first. I never was upset by that. And it's not because I don't have empathy for Linda and the best for her. But, the movie was not supposed to live that long anyway by normal rights. It's like, and to complain about that, I know it was like having a birthday party a month after your birthday. People get it together and have the birthday party and then complain that you didn't get all the presents you wanted at the birthday party, Because the movie had a shot, we thought maybe it'd get distributed, and it didn't.
But ultimately, I guess controversy can be good for a movie, and it probably helped. Certainly made some news stories out of it. Ultimately, it did very well for all of us involved in the film, and it was kind of a great learning experience. And I still look back on it as one of the better film experiences I've had.
So the fact that it got put on cable, then revived, I think was part of what makes the movie very special for me. I've been in over 50 movies, and never anything like that has ever happened before.